Internet consolidation is essentially the idea that the companies that provide the services that underpin everything that we do now on the internet are actually quite limited in number. There's only very few companies that do it. And part of the problem with this is that if you have only a very small number of companies providing these services on which everything else relies, you put those companies in a position of really immense power and influence, and they can have a great deal of say over who does what on the internet, how different applications on the internet work, how different websites work. Not to mention the fact that if one company underpins the services from a wide range of different websites, if that company has a problem and say its services stop working, then all of the other websites potentially will stop working as well. So it makes the internet much more fragile than it perhaps should be.
Now what we're seeing, no matter where you look, whatever layer you're looking at, you're seeing the same faces who are owning and operating deep down into the infrastructure that people don't often think about. And what the implications of that could be are, it changes the nature of the network. It's no longer this very survivable, very resilient thing. You're then into a stage where some of it's too big to fail, and if it does fail, you have a massive impact. And the internet was never supposed to be like that. It was supposed to be really resilient.
One of the things that happens is if you concentrate all of the transit in one location, then that location becomes vulnerable. If you have overwhelming economic concentration on the internet, then that means that it's hard for people to set up additional services because they can't compete with the very large providers. So it's really a range across the whole stack of the way the internet works. So it's hard to know exactly what kind of consequences it will have, but I think what we can say is that the current situation means that we have people who are very concerned about particular parts of the way the internet is working. And one danger that's coming from this is the tendency to try to write regulation just for those particular pieces of concentration rather than for the whole internet. We're already seeing people trying to write legislation and write regulations to deal with particular kinds of concentration. And they're having nasty consequences for other kinds of operations who might not be one of those big operations that's the target.
Consolidation is very much a governance problem. It's a problem of how do we ensure that these platforms are sufficiently open and also they do not necessarily appropriate new services arbitrarily, essentially squash that form of innovation. The fear is that the internet will essentially start to stagnate, and you will start to see a snowballing effect of as these innovators no longer are willing to take these risks, you'll start to lose that innovative character of the internet. So it will then not only will it stagnate, but it will also start to fragment into these walled gardens of you're either a Google person or an Apple person, or you do a lot of your interaction with others on Facebook and nowhere else. So there's this fear of a kind of balkanization that may occur. And if you go back to competition literature and antitrust literature, the negative side of concentration is that actors will only innovate at their pace, not necessarily at the pace of the demand for these innovative products.
There are a lot of opportunities. The internet actually depends in some cases on consolidation and concentration. Internet exchange points, for instance, are a case of concentration, and it's concentration that we do on purpose in order to lower costs. So each case has to be looked at case by case.
Concentration and economies of scale are not necessarily bad. They actually have a lot of positive benefits. They give rise to small to medium-sized actors taking advantage of intermediary services like virtual machine, cloud hosting, content delivery. All of those enable many of these small to medium-sized actors to have global reach that they otherwise would not have.
Well, I think the central thing we have to do is undertake responsible conversations about these things. I mean, the internet works, famously in a multi-stakeholder way, but that's not an accident. It's part of the way it works because there are a lot of different people involved and there isn't a central point of coordination, so you have to get people together in order to make decisions collectively. And this is another example of it. And what we need to do is make sure that we have those conversations in a way that allows us to understand the technical realities of the way the internet works. And as long as we do that, it seems to me that we can have responsible management of the way this phenomenon unpacks itself.
I think the way forward in the consolidation debate is not necessarily to apply the strong structural remedy of breakup. I think that a more useful strategy is to understand how we introduce the accountability mechanisms so we have greater transparency in how these very important platforms and subsequently the markets that they facilitate are managed and how they can better facilitate small to medium-sized enterprises.
The Journal of Cyber Policy really brings together technologists, policymakers and academics. It's looking at a wide range of issues from the crunchy, hard cybersecurity, cyber war, over to the softer side of cyber policy. We wanted to have a wide focus. The reason we are doing the special issue of the journal with the Internet Society is to explore what is happening at the more technical layer of the internet and try to pull out some of the policy issues that are relevant both to policymakers but also technologists and academics. So the conversation doesn't end here. We need to continue to examine this critically. The internet is not a static thing, it is constantly evolving. We need to continue to look deeply into the things that you can't see as well as jumping on the bandwagon of what you can see.